Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings, Pencil Kings.
You need to do art because you love it. You need to do art because there's something inside of you that wants to tell that particular part of you visually.
All right, are you ready for it? We are back, and this is the Pencil Kings podcast. We're talking again. This is part 2 of talking with Mike Clarida, and I really wanted to have Mike back because I was just talking to him before we started the interview here that I feel like Mike's got the hustle, and the hustle can be, can be great. And I feel like it's so important, especially when you're starting off, when you've got a family and all kinds of responsibilities. If you feel like you're not hustling enough, it can be like a detriment that you feel like, oh, I'm just not doing enough. And it's really frustrating. So I've been through that. So there's both sides to this equation. But who this interview is for and who I want to talk to and address are the people who, you feel like your skills are there or they're almost there where you're ready to take a job. And even if you're unsure, you might be a lot closer than you think. So you get that first entry-level job, but maybe you're also in a position where you don't have your dream studio in your city and it's across the country or it's in a different country. And what do you do in that situation when you have to maybe look at more local opportunities to get started and kind of get the ball rolling? So I want to welcome Mike again to the call. Thanks for showing up, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Yes, you're welcome.
And I'm interested to dive into some of your wisdom. So the first place, I think we touched on this a little bit before, was the portfolio. And I know that if you haven't listened to Mike's first interview, Mike, I'll just set this up. So Mike has a ton of experience. So he knows how to use Illustrator, Photoshop, like various 3D packages, doing animation, doing storyboarding, doing toy design. So he's got a ton of experience. But that's what comes after a career of being dedicated for, is it 15 years?
16 years.
16 years.
16,
16 plus all the time that you, I'm sure, spent as a kid drawing and all that. So, but we're talking to those people who are, maybe 1 or 2 years in and they're ready to take that next step. Let's start with the portfolio. How do you put it together? What goes in it? And I'll just let you go for now. You're the one that I want to talk, so I'm gonna just shut up right now.
Basically, the portfolio is you. Obviously in a visual sense. What you're doing currently, what you have done, your experience, the clients you've worked with. If you're coming out of university, what you're going to basically show, obviously, are going to be your school projects. I can recall back to when I was at Ringling, and I was consistently trying to find new ways to look at the same equation. So, if they came back to me and had a project that maybe a humorous illustration based on editorial, so I would look at it and I would try to come up with different ways and do thumbnails and whatnot. And what's great about that particular time in your life as a student is you have the leeway to make mistakes and it doesn't cost you. Whenever you're in the marketplace and you don't put the right stuff in your portfolio, and you've been here a while, 1 or 2 years, like Mitch was indicating, if you don't put the right stuff in your portfolio, it's glanced at and then it's put aside. So I kind of look at it this way. Whenever I teach, because I teach K through 12 students, I indicate your illustration needs to have an impact within 5 to 7 seconds from a distance. And then, somebody picks it up and, really draws them in. It's not just the characters you do. It's not just the compositions you do. It's not just the color you do. It's the story you want to tell. And as a student, you have to really think about what is the story I want to present to the people that I'm going after. If it's a animation studio, well, you really need to look at what they have established as their criteria for entertaining the world. Like Pixar, if you were to do stuff for Pixar, you need to look at what Pixar has done. My goodness, there's so much information out there from the art books that they publish to existing artists online that have blogs. Educate yourself and I hate to say cater your portfolio to the client that you're going for, but at the end of the day, that's what you need to do. If you want to do 3D graphics, my goodness, you don't want to show, a bunch of graphic design in there. It doesn't make sense because unfortunately, and you students and other artists alike that are listening to this, you guys know, and you will be educated on, is the fact that if the client does not see it, you cannot do it. And that is so ludicrous to think that way. I mean, I've done everything from, I mean, Mitch indicated from, some 3D work to graphic design to character illustration. I mean, I'm not going to name all the stuff that I've done, but the plain fact of the matter is, if you don't show that one little slice of, the great lexicon art world, then you can't do it, even though actually you can. So cater your portfolios, look at what the company you're going after does and has done in the past, and that is no guarantee. And that's hard to say. There are no guarantees in the world because at the end of the day, the client or the potential employer looks at you and they have to think, okay, how much time do I have to invest in this person to bring them up to our level? How much time, how much money? Because whenever you get into the art world, time is money. And it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. And money is the great dictator of what art, we do as artists. Because if you've got a family, if you've got a house, if you've got a car payment, and you want to make business as an artist, you have to hustle. Just like, Mitch was saying, hustle is, I'd say, golly, for me right now, that is currently a freelancer and a contract person, I am consistently hustling. It's like I have a two-sided mentality. I have the maintenance side, which is consistently trying to maintain my portfolio, which I do on basically almost a daily basis. I have a huge online portfolio that I direct clients to. And unfortunately, mine is kind of a hodgepodge because I want to show that I can pretty much do anything. But, that alongside with doing the art jobs, alongside with family time, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, focus your portfolio. If there's a specific job you go to, focus it. Focus your portfolio on that. Now, is that going to be the end-all portfolio? No. If you go towards animation, you have a portfolio for that. You do character design, you have a portfolio for that. You need to show the stuff that you're going after. And consistently also, as a little nugget for you guys who are coming out of school, you need to do your own stuff. You find that passion, and that's what I have. I have a passion and love for drawing and art, and hopefully that shines through in what I do.
So when you say you need to do your own stuff, what do you mean? It's that if
Well,
you had a portfolio of Spider-Mans, just like, no,
yeah. Here's the fun part of it. Whenever I show my stuff to Disney, which I do, it's funny now that I'm not in house on a consistent basis because they've kind of curtailed their freelance from on the consumer product side anyway. I still show a day-to-day or every other day piece of art that I do as an exploration into who I am as an artist. You need to consistently keep either, I heard back whenever I was learning, a lot of the nine old men in Disney and a lot of animators, Chuck Jones and all those people would keep their sketchbooks with them. Well, at first I was like, oh yeah, heck yeah, I'm going to do that. I got my sketchbook with me 24/7. I'm going to record everything. The problem with that is you get older and you start adding, sections to your life, your family, a job. That sketchbook can become a burden, and that's what it never needs to be because you don't want to go out with your family and sit there for half an hour and sketch something and ignore your family. That's not the way the life works. You need to have a time set aside, whether it's a day, whether it's 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour. And I say, and I tell the students, you need to sew back into who you are as an artist and a person, because as an artist, even though I've been doing this 16 years, I still consider myself a student of the process and of life. And the drawings are a record of that. They show who I am, where I'm going, the techniques that I'm discovering constantly, books I'm reading, and that is your stuff. And if you have a story that comes out of that, develop your story. Because what ends up happening as you go through this process of being an artist for money, you start actually selling who you are as an artist to other people and making their dreams come true. What happens to your dream? Why did you get in this to begin with? Oh, I got in to be a Disney animator. Yeah, but you really, I did the same thing, but I had a love for drawing and acting, and that's what I wanted to do. Now, doing the characters is great, for Disney and Warner Brothers and all those, but what characters do you have inside of you? And I guarantee there's something more in each of the artists out there. And, consistently discovering those little tidbits of stories, whether it's character design or maybe you've got a product in you, or maybe, because whenever you look at the grand scheme of things, if you're making 50, 70, $100,000 a year, you've basically sold all of your ideas for 100 grand. Now, could you have taken one of those ideas and developed it yourself, on the side, and eventually it pay off? Yeah, and it would be yours and you would reap all the benefits. So, and Mitch, today in the market, oh my gosh, it's so, I don't want to say easy because it's not, but you don't need, and I showed this to some of the students, you don't need money to make your dream come true. And that's hard. It's kind of an open, a new open book for some people. I mean, you can publish a book, you can put it online and do things relatively inexpensive, and boom, you're a product developer, or you have your own company, or whether it's apparel or graphic design, or you create the grand lexicon of the world in terms of art is open to you. It is open to you. Whereas 20 years ago, you had to sit there and submit your portfolio to a larger house, a publishing house, and just sit on your hands. Nowadays, nothing is stopping you. There is nothing stopping you from making your dreams come true, whether a comic book artist, animation house, design house. There shouldn't be anything stopping you unless you have something coming against you all the time, not permitting you to do it. So that's what I see. In terms of portfolio wise, again, you just have to cater it to who you're going after.
And I want to highlight one thing, because I definitely did this wrong and I did not understand it when I was a student. And I know a lot of the members inside Pencil Kings, they do understand this, they get it, but I'm slow. I feel like it's part of my gift is I have to learn the hard things the hard way. And one of them that I've recently learned is this whole idea of telling stories. That when I did my portfolio, it was like, I was always trying to recreate reality as closely as possible.
Yeah.
And that's what I went after. But that's kind of like the first level that it's like, well, you can do that, but you can tell a story, and it applies to everything. I remember I found my old portfolio, and one of the things I was showing was that I knew how to use this rendering technology. So I had a coffee cup, just a boring coffee cup. But like, I could have put a coffee cup, I'm just looking at a coffee cup on my desk here right now, and I could have put the smallest tiny little drop of blood or something on it. And all of a sudden, whoa, why is there blood? What's the story there? And that gives you something to talk about in the interview. It would have taken me, even if I didn't know how to render it, I could have painted in the blood and had it look good in literally 5 or 10 minutes. But my mind wasn't there. So just, I guess, look for opportunities where you can tell a little bit of stories, or have it be more interesting than what it is, where people are like, wait, what's going on? It's really like you want them to ask a question and then they fill in the blanks, because
Yes.
I mean, sometimes the story can be extremely obvious, but a lot of the times people will come up with their own meanings.
What is really cool, Mitch, sorry for interrupting you, but
Yeah.
what is really cool about what you're saying is this, and I see it consistently in students in high school, obviously, especially in first and second grade, because I'm always teaching, the differences between somebody that has a skill and then somebody that is creative. I can teach you to draw, okay? I can teach you the principles behind what it is to look at an object and understand shape, form, and all the elements of design, and put them in and add the principles to create a composition. However, for you to be creative takes something that a lot of us are not used to, and that is effort, the learning of wisdom, and accumulating knowledge. And it's funny because I always consistently tell people, because they, a lot of the young people now are taught to kind of shun elderly people. And I say that is a mistake. I say, because they have what is inside of their head, a world of knowledge. So what I'd like to do, not only with, elderly people, but people in the industry, is I like to squeeze their brain. I like to get all the knowledge out of it and I just gobble it up. And I just want to yum, 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 yum. And I eat it. And I said, because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is this. You look at the people around you and they're hungry for something. They want to be told what to do. And that's an interesting thing, but the creative is the person that wants to explore what to do. So the creative person is consistently, not only in science, but art, design, whatever, is consistently trying to see what other direction I'm trying to go to get the best solution possible, Whereas, the person who wants the easy path wants to be told the easiest path. And instead of discovering, oh, I made a mistake here. And I also tell people, and it kind of aggravates them, I say, I love being corrected. I love it. Correct me all day long because I want to know the best way to do it. If somebody has a comment on whether it's my video, my blog, my illustration, if I do something wrong, please tell me. Just don't give me a weird word like I don't like, or a phrase like I don't like it. Give me something more than that so I can accumulate your knowledge and just gobble it up and add it to my big computer in my head.
It's a great way to look at it. Now, I want to change. So we talked about portfolio, and I don't want to talk to those people who live in a city where their dream studio is, because I feel like when you live in LA, you live in various places, you've got such an amazing opportunity to go to networking events, go and watch a speaker talk, make all kinds of connections. So, but that's not the majority of people. The majority of people are living in places like where I grew up, where it feels like there's no opportunity, although there still is. And so this is what I want to dig into. So you got your portfolio, you know that you're not ready to go to the big time, or maybe you apply and you don't even get a letter back from them. But how do you start to hustle, or how do you start to work your portfolio so that you're getting the ball rolling? Obviously, like having a website and producing your work, I feel like we know we should do that. And if you don't know that, I just told you, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because it's such a simple thing. Have a website, start putting your art up there, start putting it on social media. There's a lot of information on that. However, where I feel like we fall down is seeing the opportunities that exist around us. And so what do we do there?
What I really realized after, I had been in the industry for 10 years is even though I had strong portfolio and a great background for what I did, the problem is nobody knew who I was. Whenever you get out of art school or whenever you finally change the direction of your career, because ultimately it's up to you, you need to kind of exactly what you're saying, have kind of a game plan. There's a lot of information out there, just like Mitch indicated, from books on how to get your portfolio out. There's YouTube, there's all these social media things. But at the end of the day, what I discovered a little bit early on was, what is your motivation? Is your motivation to be popular? Is your motivation to be famous? Is your motivation to have your own character with Disney? At the end of the day, those are cycles. And just like it indicated before, your fires, and you tend to your fires and then your fire goes out. And I think those are great. But your passion, and the same thing with me, my passion is what got me where I am. I have a love for what I do, and I focused on the artwork. And sure, I posted stuff online, and I looked around here in town. And unfortunately, in today's day and age, a lot of times it's who you know. LinkedIn is a great resource for local businesses to get your face out and really just, because that particular social media, it's not, I call it a social media site, but it's really not. It's a social media site for professionals. And, you can post work up there and whatnot, and kind of little quips here and there, and contact professionals. And what's really great about professionals, if they're successful, a lot of times they will, give you advice. And Mitch, there is no reason why you can't look up famous artists. I remember once Gary Kelly, who's an illustrator, and has done very well, for the past 30-something years. I called him. Literally, I called him. Ringling had his information on file, and his information is available, I'm sure, in some capacity somewhere around the internet. And you call him and you just say, "Hi, my name is so and so, blah blah blah," and he gave me advice, and that was incredible. And now with easy access to artists, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, you can actually message these people. That's the thing. People want to do their portfolio. This is what they want. They want to go to school. They want to graduate. They want to hold that diploma high in the air and say, "Look at me, I did it. Now give me $100,000." And that's laughable, because you haven't worked. Now you've worked for the degree, but you haven't worked hard to you pay your dues. You get your stuff out there. And unfortunately, because as well as I do, art is a subjective job, and people might not like your style or like what you do, or and it'll be hard to get work. That's why it's consistently learning and improving and telling the story and focusing on your art, and consistently looking for those jobs. You know, have I done some really weird jobs? Yeah, I mean, I designed clothes for dogs at one time. That's kind of silly. Clothes for dogs. My gosh. I mean, I did a like a mitzvah outfit for a Great Dane. That's hilarious. And I decided at that time, I said, even though this is a ridiculous job, not insulting anybody that designs clothes for dogs, but it is something that I need to take into me. I need to learn from it. You know, I mean, at that time, you know what I did? I did a bunch of anatomy studies for animals, for dogs. You know, I learned their skulls. I learned, you know, the different thicknesses and breeds. And at that time, it kind of springboarded me into learning about different types of stitching and fabrics and printing processes. And I carried that stuff whenever I went and I applied for a job with Foot Locker. So
Right. Yeah. And I think that's one of the key points is that you get this insider knowledge.
yeah,
You know, you go into it, you're like, oh, well, I want to be designing characters, but I need to pay the bills, and this is creative. Like doing something that's creative or where you have design elements is, I feel it's better than taking maybe the easy job, where I feel like there's easy jobs around, jobs that people don't want to do, and there's a reason for that. And so if you can be creative, there's always like crazy opportunities for you to learn and then apply those to things later. So
yes.
for example, I remember there was a project where we had to design motorcycles, and we couldn't use the real motorcycle, so we had to make these slight changes. But all that knowledge of motorcycles, which I didn't have, but the person ahead of me is like, oh, well, you need to make the fairings more aerodynamic. I was like, what's a fairing? But you know, that was an opportunity for, now I know, you know, a lot more about motorcycle anatomy.
Yeah.
We'll call it anatomy, and what that does. So if there was a positions like Harley Davidson is looking for a concept artist, well, maybe that's something that would be in my wheelhouse, because now I know a lot more about motorcycles than I did before. Is it my dream? I don't know. I haven't tried it, but it's an opportunity that's there now because I took the opportunity in another time to learn this stuff and just to be curious and fascinated.
Yes, I agree. That is key. And having the right attitude is also a big part of, you know, not only where I have been, but where I am going. And, you know, people see that in your art. If you're doing art just to post online, you can see it. If you're doing art just to get a job, then people can see it. You need to do art because you love it. You need to do art because there's something inside of you that wants to tell that particular part of you visually. And that's where I'm consistently telling people, you know, in my videos and stuff, and I say, you know, you might have bills to pay, you might have kids to take to school, student loans, but at the end of the day, if you have that love for drawing, it's going to show, you know. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, because, you know, I've been looking for work, but on the other hand, I have really been loving being at home drawing every day. It's freaking me out, because even though I still do that, I was doing that whenever I was doing contract work. I get up now and there's just, you know, there's quiet time in the house, and I sit down and I just really, that knowledge, it's like my brain is that sponge. And I think people have kind of lost some of that. You know, they're so money focused and go, 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 that a lot of times they miss the real point of why they're doing stuff. And that's to have fun and to tell your story. So.
So you touched on LinkedIn, and I want to come back to not necessarily LinkedIn specifically, but these opportunities that exist locally. I want to dig a little bit deeper on these, because I feel like there's your dream that you want to fulfill, and I feel like you need to be putting time into that consistently. So my story personally, I knew I wanted to work in video games, and one of my first job was being a Flash animator for the web and for television commercials and whatnot. I never wanted to be a Flash animator. It's something that I could do, but my nights I would always spend making 3D robots, because I loved robots. And so that's sort of like this balance. And I was fortunate because, you know, just like who you know, a family member was in a meeting with these guys who were doing animation, like, hey, my son does all this graphic stuff. And so he made an introduction. So I was lucky, really, really lucky there, that I had somebody to make an introduction. And then they sent me a test and thought I would be horrible and, the rest is history. But I feel like there's a lot of people that don't have, as creatives, our parents often don't understand what the heck we're trying to do. Our friends might not understand what we're trying to do. But you do, in your heart, you know what you're trying to do. But you need to get some experience. And so where can we look for these opportunities? Because I feel like well, actually, they're not so obvious. So this was like, I would say they were an advertising or a branding agency. They did a lot of animation, but they could be more traditionally categorized as this. So there's those type of agencies that you could say, hey, are you doing any kind of video work? Like that could just be the start of the conversation.
Right.
But what other things exist that are sort of, because I feel like we're talking with a lot of people who want to do story-based stuff,
Right.
but you may have to take a job designing websites while because you know how to use Photoshop and whatever else, but you spend your nights working on your story-based stuff. So what are some other opportunities that, especially for really junior, really green, my first creative job, in air quotes, type of stuff?
Well, there's always art jobs. That's what's kind of interesting. I always indicate to the kids around town that there's everything you basically see has art on it. There's Chamber of Commerce in your local city you can join and kind of market yourself that way. Of course, there's social media, there's Facebook and all that other stuff we can get into. There's LinkedIn. There's quite a few resources online, probably from Graphic Artists Guild to, golly, I mean, you would.
Okay. So,
Mitch, because there's a lot of companies out there that you can blindly send stuff to, whether it's ad agencies, there's that Graphic Artists Guild pricing guide that has a huge archive. There's books in the library that have archives of updated addresses and phone numbers to art directors and stuff. And that's what's great about the internet too, because a lot of these places don't necessarily need you in-house. They can still utilize you. I've done stuff for Sony before out in California. There's a 4-hour delay, but we still made it work. And, I did stuff for some of you older guys for, the rock group Rat and Foreigner and some other littler groups, but they had no problem hiring me. So the information is there. It's there.
Okay. So I want to stop you because you said it so nonchalantly, like, yeah, there's like this Graphic Artists Guild or Graphic Designers Guild. And I was like, wow, that's a huge thing that there are these groups that I feel that we don't realize this. We just think everything happens, it's either online or it doesn't exist. It's like, no, there are people meeting, talking, who aren't online, who don't have a Twitter account, but who have all the connections that you could ever want or who could mentor you in a way that you need. And so that locally, where would you start to look for groups like this? I feel like the school might be a good place.
The school's a really good resource. It depends on the school you go to, obviously, and how much they really are interested in placing their students. Obviously, place students reflect a good reputation of teaching from the school, therefore they get more students. I went to a very good school that had a great resource department, and recruiters came, and you got exposed that way. Now, I didn't get a job from any of the recruiters, but I did have the opportunity to interview with quite a few higher end companies. And that kind of showed me the other side of the equation. But as far as, the information, because the information is power and key, it's out there. Like you indicate, the Graphic Artists Guild, the Illustration Society of Illustrators. Now, a lot of those places cost money to go to their events, but I think some of them are free to join. And then you have access to this giant archive. And believe it or not, this is going to be really dumb to say this, but if you put into the Google search, like art jobs or whatever specific genre that you're trying to go for, then a lot of times all those keywords will bring up the blogs or the websites, and you can contact these people. Same thing with YouTube. I'm just saying, in the days whenever I was out there, I basically had to put a portfolio together, a real nice portfolio, and I had to send it off and wait. So, but and do follow-up phone calls. Nowadays, it's kind of reversed, because nowadays you can literally apply to jobs over your phone, which is kind of interesting. From Indeed to some of the Job Aware, you can apply to art jobs over your phone. I mean, I've done it quite a few times. So that's a really good option. I just think in today's market for the artist, it's not just local. I mean, if you want to do sculpting metalwork here in town, and then you have your own shop, then that's fine. But if you're looking to expand who you are as an artist and maybe go out and do something animation wise or character design or something. I mean, the internet's the open book. That's kind of the thing nowadays. And with social media, if you post stuff all the time, and that's another thing I kind of wanted to just dip into slightly is I know some of the people coming out of college, they're really into social media and they're posting stuff that isn't really art related. And unfortunately, all that stuff goes and it's attached to your name. And if a potential employer decides to search you, then all that stuff you've said will get attached to your art profile. And it can sometimes hurt you in a job search. So that's maybe something you need to consider as well.
All right. Well, let's explore this and let's look at the other side of the coin. What are some non-art related things that you could post on your social media that would help you? Like volunteer work, or is there anything that's relevant?
You could do volunteer work, family, whatever type of family you're in is good. I think that creative stuff, maybe photography, stuff you're interested in. They like to see a well-rounded person. Again, attitude is everything. Taking picture of your food. I don't know. I see a lot of people. Whenever I find a new artist, then I immediately go to search for them. And if I find stuff on Facebook where they're ranting about, something that somebody said, it's like, really? The only thing I typically post now is art related. I try to have a humor side to it and make myself be a positive force for good.
Here's actually one example that I hadn't thought of when I asked the question, but for me, I read a lot of books about how to be more efficient or effective, well, a lot of personal development stuff. And so at one point in my life, I had a blog about personal development. And so my prospective employer, he saw this and he was like, wow, this guy is really serious about his personal development. This is the kind of person that I would at least want to interview and see more of if he's legit.
Yes.
And I feel like that's something that wasn't necessarily related to art, but you could make it about your art and you could just post your journey, the creative experiments that you're trying, the different character designs. And it doesn't mean that you have to post absolutely everything, but I think when you're things that show your passion and your depth, and I know that's a little bit vague, but sit on it, think about, meditate on it or whatever you do and think about how can I show my depth that there's my portfolio, but there's also this amazing brain inside my head which just chock full of amazing knowledge. And how can I show that in other ways that if somebody's really digging into me, they can find it?
Yes. Everything that is relative and connected to each other. I'm not going to get too deep in that, but I have a kind of an analytical mind. I had a hobby as a teenager restoring cars, so I've restored a lot of cars. And, having all that mechanical knowledge in my brain from restoring cars, building engines, all of that has added to the fact that now I can do robots, I can design cars, I can design toys. And that's the thing. Whenever you learn a new skill, whether it's customer service, whether it's whatever, and nowadays we can obviously post all that stuff online. But how can it make you a better, if art is your focus, how can it make you a better artist? And one of the things that actually helped me, and I'm going to continue on, is basically whenever I was in high school and going into college, I had scholarship to sing. So I sang all through college in my early years, opera and doing some opera stuff. And whenever that basically I kind of looked at the grand landscape of what was going to happen. And I thought, I think I might be an artist instead, a visual artist, because people that sing are artists as well. But what's great is I've kept singing up, and it's really added to that spice of life. And occasionally I'll post stuff or I'll show stuff or do some voice work. And that's just another facet of somebody looking at you as an asset. If a rock group comes to you with, I want you to design a rock cover, and you say, really, I've done music. I know, I have music. And what does that do? It clicks. It's like a switch that clicks on in their head. Suddenly, you understand them, and they can relate to you. So it's not just it's not just visual. We think visual art, but if you add all these other things in, it makes you a more attractive commodity that these companies are willing to pay top dollar for. So that's why I'm always saying develop your own thing. Always look at it as an adventure, as a learning process, because it is. You add to it. It's like whenever I do murals as well. I've done a bunch of murals for Florida Hospital here in Orlando. And all throughout my childhood, I drew on the walls. And little did I understand that it would be making me a ton of money at something I do, and I love it. And that is just a wondrous thing, you know?
All right, so I think we've got time for one last question, and it's sort of the natural conclusion. But there's two parts to this question, so there's some room to breathe. So let's say you reach out, you find either an opportunity locally, or you find one that's at a distance that you're going to work remotely. How do you, because we've talked a lot about all these intangible things that you bring to the table that maybe it's not shown necessarily in your portfolio. Mm-hmm. And just to give an example, is one of the things that I've always tried to do is that I want, when I leave a company, and I don't go into a job thinking that I'm going to leave, but I just feel like if I left the company, I would want them to miss having me around.
Yes.
So I always try to be upbeat and kind of off the wall and make the office like a little bit weird. And just bring in like a unique energy into the thing. But I never thought of this at the time of like when I was sitting down for an interview, like how would I show that I'm kind of this, I don't know, diamond in the rough or so, whatever it is, but I raise the morale of the office when I'm there. That's one of the things that I actually try to do. But there's, we all have these unique gifts. So how would you, in an interview, let's say in person, how would you show some of that, or how would you let your personality shine through, maybe a little bit intentionally?
Well, I've always been a firm believer in being who you are. I mean, you put on fronts, obviously, whenever you go to an interview because you don't know how they're going to react if you are goofy and you suddenly say something goofy. Maybe they would take it as being, oh, he's not really serious about this interview. I kind of am very genuine in my answers. I'm very direct eye contact. I make sure. And, just through the duration of me being an observer, I know certain body gestures really convey a sense of either attitude or cutoffness. So I really pay attention to those things. But I'm genuine in listening. If they're saying something to me, I make sure and genuinely listen to what they're saying and, come up with an answer that hopefully is the right answer. I had an interview with the company that I was with for 10 years. And I kept coming back to the fact that I love what I did and I wanted to be part of what they were doing. And if let's say you go for Disney, like I'll give you an example. Whenever I went to go and talk to the production manager over at Disney and she walked me around this incredible environment. Let me tell you something. When you're walking around an environment that you can only have dreamt about and you're looking at so much Disney product, and then you see Disney character designs, and then she walks you into a room of 3D printing, and then she walks you into a room of all the original maquettes from Hercules and all that other stuff, and it gets your heart racing. But I generally looked at her and I said, I am a passionate artist that loves what I do, and storytelling is in my heart. And if you're honest, like in an interview, then that's going to come through, every single time.
Awesome. So that's the in-person. Now, the next one is you're doing it over Skype or phone or whatever. So you may have video, you may not, but let's just focus on the voice part of it because it's a lot easier, of course, to read your interviewers' body language when you're sitting across from them. However, when you're on the phone, it's a completely different thing. They have no idea what you look like, and I'm a firm believer that how you look, does impact things. So some of us have an advantage and some have a disadvantage, but it's just life. But how do you get those sort of intangibles to come across on the phone? Is it the same thing? Just, speaking from your heart, I'm passionate about what you're doing and storytelling, or is there other little tidbits of knowledge that you've can give to people from the experience that you've had?
Basically, what I try to do is I try to listen. People love to talk, okay? They love to talk. They love to hear themselves talk, some people more than others. As artists, we are very reserved a lot of times. We want what we say to be prolific and change other people's lives in whatever way, whether you're positive or negative. But I try to listen a little bit more in situations like you and I are having right now, especially when you go to talk and make a point. In class, whenever I teach the students, they're so interested in talking that they don't listen to what you're saying. So I think that a good listener is worth his weight in gold. For one, taking direction is another thing. But not only, like you're indicating, in an interview process, but also in a Skype process, and then you have an email process, or somebody sees your phone number and they start texting you. So those are two other ways of communication. But being positive, saying what you feel from the heart, answering the questions directly every single time, don't beat around the bush, and try not to go off on tangents. That's a very big thing as well, because somebody that is really intelligent at in their side of the equation will listen to what you're saying, and a lot of times they'll say, well, you didn't answer the question. And that's a bad thing. So yeah, listen and get the question key and answer it as best you can. Be honest, and that's the other thing. Really be honest. You don't want to be caught in a lie.
Right. Man, I can't imagine that. Although I'm sure it happens every single day.
Yeah,
too.
It definitely happens.
It's like, yeah, I know this software.
Yeah. I interviewed a couple people back in the day, and it was just very plain that they were extremely nervous and making stuff up, and I didn't call them on the lie, but afterwards, I said, we're not going to hire him. So yeah, that's always be honest.
All right. Well, we should wrap up. Is there any last things, any last overarching theme or that you want to?
Well, I think, I kind of iterated last time that, we should always take into account that what we're doing it should be, should be fun. It's very hard in today's day and age to find something that we being artists are really passionate about, because we're so caught up in making money. Especially, me now really looking for that next payoff. But at the end of the day, I need to focus on art and what's really important. And, I kind of made this comment in my video. I said, why would I sell myself, being all my ideas, to a company that at the end of the day is only interested in paying off their shareholders? They would basically remove me if I became a liability. And that's why I'm always recommending people working on their own stuff and their own dream, because if you spend your entire life making somebody else's dream come true, you're going to find yourself 67 years old and you're not going to know where you are. So that's what I think. Find your passion, stick to it, love what you do. And if you don't, find what you do, need to love, or find, what I'm saying. Find what you need to love. No, what I'm trying.
I'm making that T-shirt right now. Find what you need to love.
Anyway, that's what I have to say.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it, Mike, and it's just so great to have somebody has so much experience, because I feel that when you find that perfect job and you've been there for a long time, that's one thing, but it's a different story than I feel like a lot of people need to hear the lessons from.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in especially this helping people get started, because I feel like it's really hard to get started, but once that ball gets rolling and you have the right attitude and you're passionate, just the sky's the limit. So many amazing things can happen, and if we can help inspire a few people or a lot of people to start that ball rolling, I think that we've done our karmic duty for the universe for this Friday. So thanks so much, Mike. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Demands patience, skill, years of practice.
Ah, you talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.